The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com. And good morning. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Old School podcast, podcast about the American education system. Although we've been known to delve into other topics and we've been known to do a little teaching ourselves, as we will today, about a new installment in the States series, an infrequent but still lovable series that we do about the various states. And with me in that endeavor is my very good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, sir.
Herr Miller, it's good to see you this morning.
And it's good to see you. What's going
on? I can't say too much.
You can't?
Well, it's earlier than usual. That's one. We're up at the crack of dawn to do this.
Well, I think that's a bit of a hyperbolic statement, but okay. So
I never exaggerate.
I never speak in hyperbole.
That's right.
All right. Well,
that's it.
So you're not doing anything, or you cannot confess to doing anything?
No, just nobody here but us chickens.
Well, we have major issues at the Miller household.
I was hoping to get into that. I figured you had to, because you've broken ground again.
I've broken ground again, and it is against my will. It's against my advice. And I did, Bill Burr once joked about, with arguments with his wife, he said he just wants to win a fight for once. He just wants to win an argument.
Just once.
And just once. And listen, husbands know they win arguments all the time, but the wife refuses to accept the victory. So, when I say I want to win an argument, I mean I want to win an argument that we could both agree that I won. And so
much have you to learn.
Grasshopper. So anyway, so the idea is that my wife wanted a pool.
A pool?
We live in Texas.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to have a pool, that's certainly the kind of place to have one. One, because it's bloody hot in this state. But second, you could use a pool ideally from about April to, best case scenario, the beginning of November. You could potentially use a pool in the state of Texas. That's how large of a window we have compared to if you had a pool in Boston, you could use it for 2 months, and that's about it.
Okay.
So, but the problem is nobody, and I mean nobody, wants a pool. It's like boats. You never want to be the person that owns the boat. You want to know the person who owns the boat. It's the same thing with a pool. You don't want to have a pool. And so when my wife first started talking about this, I set up in a style that would make a top-level prosecuting attorney proud. I laid out all these people that we know, that we presumably like, who all have the same response: don't do it. For whatever reason, but just don't do it. And I thought, I won the argument. I have won it. And then my wife went rogue, and she decided to leave all logic, reasoning, and rationalism behind and said, yes, but I still want one. And so I lost the argument. Even though we all agree that I won it, I lost it. And so right now, I will say this, in my backyard right now is a childhood dream come true. Because how many times did you hear as a child that if you dug down deep enough, you'd get to China?
Yeah.
So the wonder of what existed beyond the topsoil in the backyard was always a subject of some mystery for young boys. I don't know if girls thought this way. I imagine they were much more sophisticated at that age. But I always wanted to know what was underneath the topsoil. And so right now I have a hole in my backyard in parts equal to or more than actually 8 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
And
eight
and it
eight
just
feet.
like different colors in the dirt. It's almost like you're going into the Mesoameric period of whatever period of ancient history, but it's just kinda cool to see it.
Okay. Well, first of all, you've said the word pool about 50 times, and every time you do, there's an explosion in your microphone. So I think you need to scoot back half a sec.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I just noticed it because of all the pools. Um, Maybe our editor will take care of that. Um,
it's yeah, I'll get right on
uh,
that.
but but I thought it was just clay. I mean, I've never really been outside much. I've mentioned that before. I don't go outside in Texas for a lot of reasons, but it's supposed to be clay, like Play-Doh or something, clay.
Well, no, so I was talking to the guys that were digging the aforementioned edifice in our backyard, and they started talking about, well, there's clay, there's topsoil, and then there's clay, and then there's white rock, and then there's blue rock, and they started giving me all these different color rocks that I've never heard of before, and so I'm a little bit I don't I don't know if they were showing off or whether I'm just that ignorant, but whatever it was, they were just talking about there was just different layers, but that does include clay, the infamous clay that prevents Texans from having things like basements or what have you.
Yeah.
And so I got these massive amounts of dirt in our backyard, and I also have these massive machines. I have a big backyard. It is somewhat compromised by the gigantic hole in the middle of it now,
You
but
showed
I
me the
but
picture. It looked like your whole backyard, basically.
it does. But seeing these massive machines, you wake up in the morning because our bedroom's on the second floor. You look out the window and you expect to see the breaking of dawn, as it were, and you're not used to seeing anything else. Now there's like a crane that's like coming up through one window, and you're like, "Holy cow!" So there's a lot going on at the Miller household.
Wow. Well, I'm sure it will end at some point, but they seem to be
Lord
spending the
willing,
week. They're going to be spending the weekend with you. Those cranes.
yeah. Although the one guy, both of them are East Texas boys, and the one guy is a fisherman, and he has a couple of bags of um, catfish that he caught, cleaned, and cut up into nuggets size pieces of catfish flesh. And he's bringing that over, and I'm going to bread that stuff, and I'm going to fry it, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Nice.
Maybe you'll come over for a little catfish.
Hmm. When is this, Herr Miller?
I don't know. Whenever he's bringing it over on Monday,
Oh,
and
I'll
so
be elsewhere on Monday, unfortunately, but you won't. You'll be eating catfish.
I'll be okay. Yeah. Or like I said, it can go in the freezer and then wait
Oh,
till you get it back.
there you go. Okay.
There you go. So today, what we're going to talk about, we have talked about Texas. We've talked about Washington D.C. Um, did we talk about Maryland?
Like every other episode, we
But today we talk about the home state, one of many that Dr. Bourgeois claims, the great state of Oregon.
it's a good place to start. I I would definitely call it my state. I wasn't born there, but I wasn't born in Texas.
But
Uh,
you were raised there.
it made me who I am, Herr Miller. I grew up in the tough streets of Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah. That doesn't have the same ring as the tough streets of Baltimore.
Okay. Yeah.
No one's made a version of The Wire from Eugene, Oregon. So
No, it would be about a 2 episode, not 6 or 8 seasons, but it was a great place to grow up.
so when you're trying to describe to people why Oregon is special, because you have a deep love for the state of Oregon. Um, what are some of the first things that you bring up?
It's not as apparent anymore because it's been how's your math, Herr Miller? 1994.
Yeah,
That's 30 years for you and me.
sure.
Is that right?
Yeah,
So it's been a while since I've lived there. Um, but there's a relaxed nature, and I think we have well, we've talked about kind of the Texas vibe. of
Right.
friendliness and so forth. And it's just it's a little bit more casual, I would say. When you go, I remember not being there for a little bit and going to a convenience store. I'm sure I've told you this before. And um, well, first of all, I think they were one of the very last ones to stop pumping gas for you at gas stations. I assume you pump your own gas there now. I'm about to find out in a couple of days if I need to
I
get out
think
and
I
pump
think
or
New
they.
I think New Jersey is the lone holdout.
Okay,
I
because
think
for the longest time it was very awkward because you know they would actually have a conversation with you, fill her up, check the oil, no sir, and how are you doing? But when you go in to get a Coke or some beef jerky or whatever you do when you're traveling, and then you leave, you know in Texas or elsewhere we might say so long or something. Take
Yeah.
they say take it easy. That's Oregon. So
Okay.
their way of saying goodbye is to say, "Just chill out, man. Take it easy."
So it's
Uh,
all those hippies that escaped from California, but
I guess so, but that explains, the vibe, and I like it. I mean, how many times have you heard "Take it easy" in Texas when you leave?
only when the Eagles are playing on the radio.
That's right. So that's kinda nice. And that's all I have as far as the people there. A lot of people are from there or California, uh, whereas here in the bigger cities, people come from everywhere, and you have Texans.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of Oregonians are Oregonians.
Would you say that Oregon is a rural state?
I don't.
What I mean by that is that, every state has rural areas, but as far as mentality, as far as approach to life, as far as kinda interpersonal interactions with others, do you think that there is a rural quality to Oregon?
I think for most of it, I mean, it's an odd state in that there's Portland, which is a big city, and there's Salem and Eugene, which are smaller the
Mm,
cities with universities and colleges and all that good stuff. And then, yeah, then there's a lot of farming. So it depends on where you are, but there's a lot of open space. There's a lot of variety. You have trees, real trees, tall
okay,
trees. You have desert, you have high desert, you have ocean, you have actual mountains, you have hills, you have grass, all the things that you don't see a lot around here.
true. So, what would you say now that you've been an Oregonian, um, in the diaspora for about 30 plus years, and your
No one's ever said that to anyone before. Not like wandering Jews.
but what would you say is most people's perceptions of Oregon? Stereotypes, perceptions,
Oh,
ideas about the state, if
uh,
they have anything at all, or do most people not even know the state exists?
well, people stay there. I mean, I believe that I may be of one of maybe 2 or 3 people who's actually left Oregon and moved to Texas, uh,
Okay,
and not come back within a couple weeks, which I've tried to do desperately, um, for about 5 years. Yeah, I was very interested in getting back there. Um, so what was your question again?
well, no, just about how people perceive Oregon, because with Texas especially, there is certainly a strong identity held by Texans, but then there's also a strong perception or stereotype held by people outside of Texas. Now, Oregon doesn't have quite the same profile as Texas does, and so maybe people don't think about it in the same way or as often. But have you ran into perceptions that people think about when they think of Oregon?
Well, I picture both hands trying to surround a redwood tree, and they need about 3 people to hug the tree. Uh, so protecting nature seems to be one of the cliches about people
Yeah,
on the West Coast, incredibly liberal politically, and it's mixed like everywhere else now. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's definitely leans there, but it hasn't always. It's gone back and forth a little bit in the past 30 years or so. It's not.
Politically, you would say, much like Washington, that there is a strong difference between, um, the west side of the mountains, the Cascades, and the east side of the mountains.
Yeah, mm,
Yeah.
for sure. But it's I'm not giving I'd be terrible if I were like working for the state of Oregon being a
Tourism board.
tourism board. My world wasn't that large when I was there.
Mm.
I can talk a little bit about the University of Oregon where I spent, I think, 9, 10 years. I think 9 years there, 9 good years.
But I think the idea that you can't speak too much beyond Eugene, your beloved hometown, which I was very fortunate to get a chance to visit with you, those many years ago. Um, I think perhaps that gives it somewhat its rural quality. The fact that people tend to stay in the areas where they are, and there's it's a collection of rather close knit communities,
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of mobility that tends to happen within the state of Oregon.
yeah, we could research that, but that is my impression. And um, people don't leave there. I mean, talk about you want to try to find a teaching position. At least back when I was looking for teaching positions, you know, it, it's very difficult. It was back in the whenever that was, the early '90s when I was trying to start teaching.
Mhm.
You would have to take a I mean, they had it down to the decimal, you're a point 0.4 teacher, you're a point 0.5, point 0.6, point 0.7, people would take part-time, they wouldn't be on insurance, they'd do anything just to get their foot in the door. I mean, I took a point 0.4 position once, and it was hard. It was hard to get a position there because it's such a desirable place to live. I mean,
Mm.
who wouldn't wanna live there? With the mild climate and the scenic beauty, all these things that you can't really even take for granted when you're there because it's you just notice just how beautiful it is.
It is one of those states that I have thought about as far as, once it dawned on me that my wife really was not gonna buy into the island of Greece, some island in Greece in the Mediterranean, to try to sit there and think about, where could I get something close to that as far as the kind of the maritime culture or whatever the case may be, nice climate, what have you. Oregon's one of those places, and it is surprisingly, affordable in places, so it does have its attractions,
Well, consider Bayern, Bavaria, southern Germany.
right?
It's got a lot of similarities there,
It does. Yeah,
and climate and the hills, and it has some serious mountains. And I mean, how many states can you say there's really, really, really good skiing? It's a handful
right.
of states, and then the coast. We don't call it the beach there. We go to the coast. Um,
'Cause it's not really a beach in the typical sense that you might consider a beach.
well, there's sand and there's
Well, yeah, but I mean, as far as like a beach culture,
no,
people
nobody's
laying
gonna
out with
damn
umbrellas.
or go swimming in it. No, you'd be getting hypothermia, and there'd be a lot of dead sea lions and dead people to swim. It's just too cold year round.
Yeah.
I don't. So that wasn't a childhood memory. Everybody wanted to probably try it. Oh, I can do it, and then they shivering. But it's windy there, and even in the summer years, it's surprising how cold it can be at the coast.
So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start out by giving you a little bit of an idea about what Oregon is from a kind of geographical standpoint, but then also then get into a little bit of history and then kind of go into how Oregon came to be. And then we kind of getting into some of the things that Oregon is known for today, that we can both kind of share and kind of explain with that. And of course, you're going to be driving that part of the ship just because of your
I don't
knowledge
know.
of the area.
I don't know any of this stuff here, Miller. I have a list of like their state seal, and it's not the seal like the sea lion. I know their flower, which is an Oregon grape. Um,
We got we're gonna get to that, but,
I know their capital and their population.
yes.
I even know their senators because I can see them right here in front of me.
Let's
And
start with topography,
oh,
and so
okay. So
there's
tell
about
me, about the because let me tell you, I made a lot of maps of Oregon growing up. I will say that
okay, well,
in
maybe
junior high.
you can add to this. So there's 6 basic areas
Mhm.
of Oregon, topographically speaking. The biggest that takes up nearly the entire eastern half of the state is the Columbia Plateau. This is where Hell's Canyon is located. This is the deepest gorge in North America. It's about 5,500 feet deep.
I'll be damned.
Yeah. And so, have you been to Hell's Canyon?
No, never heard of it.
Okay. So, and so as we
You made that.
continue this
You made
episode on
that.
Oregon with our Oregon expert,
You're making this up so far. You could be talking about Idaho for all I know.
but I mean, you talk about a state that is primarily this is the highlands areas. These are the steppe areas. You know, this is not that different from say central Mexico, which is basically made up of the plateau of Mexico, and so you have this elevated area, but that is still relatively flat. But you have these little gouges in it, and that's where Hell's Canyon comes
Oh,
from.
okay.
So you have the Columbia Plateau, and then south of the plateau, you have an area called the Basin and Range region. This is kind of a semi area. There's some few steep mountains, but for the most part, you have basically like a high desert. When you go running north to south, and it basically splits the state in two, both geographically, culturally, and just any other way you care to split a place. This is the Cascade Mountains. And Mount Hood is the state's highest point. It's about 11,000 feet or over 11,000 feet. This is also where you have Crater Lake, the only national park in the state of Oregon. It's the deepest lake in the United States at almost 2,000 feet deep. And so this is the kind of the high, majestic mountains that you were kind of talking
Well,
about.
that's the top of the state in near Portland is Mount Hood, and then
Yeah,
Crater Lake is down very
a little
close
bit further south.
close to
Yeah,
California. And strangely enough, I'll be in that high desert in a couple of days. So
there you go. And then you have a narrow fertile area in the northwest, which is called the Willamette Lowlands.
the Willamette.
Willamette, yes.
Come on, man. Willamette. That sounds like somebody from Maryland talking.
I don't know.
It's the
Trying to
Willamette.
just trying to play the part. So,
That was a setup.
and then you have the Coast Range. These are low forested mountains, small lakes, cliffs.
Beauty.
It gives Oregon's coastline its rather unique appearance in contrast to, south of Sacramento. That's a different looking beach. But then you get north of Sacramento into Oregon and then southern Washington, you have very much kind of a rocky beach. And not surprisingly, if the notion of a rocky beach looks familiar to you and you're around our age, The Goonies was filmed in Astoria, as I recall. And so that was my first exposure when I'm
Good Lord.
watching these gigantic rocks on the beach. That's where you come across it. And then in the southwest corner, you have the Klamath Mountains. This is the Oregon Caves National Monument. This is some of the other beautiful areas that you find in Oregon. Um, which area? I guess you'd be more familiar with the Cascades.
Yeah, those are kind of our mountains, growing up, the Cascades. And then there's the Willamette River Valley, which
Mhm.
what goes from Portland to Eugene, that area. And
So you have like a little converging point of a bunch of different kind of geography points.
oh yeah, and when go over towards the coast, the weather pattern changes, sometimes
Mhm.
dramatically. And it's just about an hour's drive, from the valley to the coast, and weather's very different.
Well, I mean, both Oregon and Washington, to use a geographical term, Western Washington, Western Oregon are the leeward side of the Cascade Mountains. And this is where you're going to get all your rain. This is where you're going to get all of your kind of lush vegetation, the kind of gigantic trees or what have you. And then you get onto the leeward side of the mountain, which is on the east side of the mountain. And then you have this kind of deserty, not desert, but a very dry, very arid region. of the state, which kind of lends to that different character. And it is shocking how geography can produce different cultures, different personalities, different, political mindsets, the whole 9 yards, and Oregon and Washington have that.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the map, I mean, you can tell when you fly in. So you fly into Portland, Eugene, you can see the green, and it's
Yeah,
it's incredible. But I, there aren't a lot of states. I mean, most of the states, just looking at them geographically, are relatively consistent across the state.
right.
But Oregon definitely described it very well. Has infinite variety.
Mhm. It contains multitudes.
Yes. Um,
Well, the history of Oregon goes back pretty far. If you talk about the first Native American tribes there, the biggest ones were the Klamath Indians, which was in the south central part of the state. You have the Coquille Indians in the southwest. The Chinook were pretty prominent in the northwest part of the state. So these were the guys that were there prior to Europeans show up. And the first Europeans start showing up in about the mid to late 1700s. By 1803, the United States buys the Louisiana Territory. Now, this does not include Oregon, but it butts up against Oregon because it basically takes the territory from Louisiana and then goes northwest all the way up to Montana. And so people's first interaction with Oregon, at least from a kind of an American viewpoint, was after the purchase of the Louisiana Territory. Now, from the point of the Louisiana Territory afterwards, we get into this hazy period where both the Americans and the British up in Canada start to basically it amounts to like a joint custody of the Oregon Territory. And when we talk about the Oregon Territory, we're talking about both Oregon and Washington. And so there was a joint treaty that was signed in 1818. You have some of the first forts that were built. The forts that typically were built on the Columbia River. For those of you who don't know, the Columbia River makes up the border of a good chunk between Washington and Oregon. And so like Fort Vancouver was part of the Hudson Bay Company. You had an earlier fort there that I think Fort Vancouver kind of takes over for it. But by the 1840s, there's starting to become tension, and the tension is between the British and the Americans. The Americans are starting to not just go into Oregon, but they're starting to populate it. The British had been trying desperately to get people in Canada to move to the west. And we're not just talking about just Oregon, but what is now British Columbia, the Yukon Territory. They're trying to get people to move into this area because one of the characteristics of a place that can be claimed by another place is if you have people there. And the problem was the British were never able to sustain a population and grow a population. The problem with the Americans, at least from a British point of view, is everywhere the Americans go, they breed like rabbits.
what?
And what started out as 20 becomes 120 in like 10 days. And then pretty soon the Americans start kind of taking over. Now, this creates that tension. And when James K. Polk, he was a Democratic president elected in 1844, when he comes into office, one of the things he needs to get settled is the Oregon Territory. And there becomes like this kind of the slogan, about the idea of taking this territory, taking it from the British. The British, who have no reason to hand it over except for the fact that they can't hold it because they can't get people there, they decide that the historical trajectory is that the United States is going to take over this region. And so they thought that in an effort to try to maintain good relations, both at that moment and later, they decided to do a deal. And so the Oregon Territory, the Oregon Treaty is signed with Great Britain in 1846. That creates the Oregon Territory. Now, where the name Oregon comes from is a bit debated. There is one idea that it comes from a French word meaning hurricane. There's also a Chinook word for a particular kind of fish. Is in all of your education in Oregon, did it ever come up where that word came from?
Um, no. Um,
No.
it was just stressed that it wasn't pronounced Oregon.
So all the people outside of Oregon.
Yeah. We have a T-shirt that phonetically has Ori and then a gun after it, GUN. So yeah, Oregon.
Well, Oregon or Oregon becomes a state.
Yeah,
It was established as a territory in 1849, separate from Washington. Washington becomes a territory in 1853. This is all right before the war. And then in 1859, Oregon becomes the 33rd state. By 1907, you have the Spokane, Portland, Seattle Railroad that gets built. That, of course, is going to add to the ease of people traveling into Oregon, and in doing so, create the state that we have today. Would you say that the main metro areas of Oregon are Portland, Salem, and Eugene?
sure. I'll go with
Okay.
that.
But
Um,
Portland, I mean, how different is Portland looked upon compared to the rest of the state, even the rest of the western part of the state? It's a bit of an odd duck.
an odd duck. Um, it's a
No pun intended.
no. It's I mean, it gets a lot. It's in the news a lot lately. Portland, but it's grown. It's probably not the same city that I grew up visiting, but it was always really a incredibly large city compared to what we're used to. And it feels like an urban center, whereas there's nowhere in the state that's like that.
It is a state that doesn't have a lot of things that other states have,
Excuse me.
but well,
What
I
are you
mean,
what are you intimating here, Miller?
well, no, I'm just saying, as far as like, the big gigantic cities, even Portland, the largest city in Oregon, would not be considered by anybody else's measure to be a large city. I mean,
Did they, did
it's
they
certainly a city.
did they have a basketball team that in 1977 won the NBA championship with the great Bill Walton?
Yeah, but the Hickory whatever in Indiana also were state champions, and so
Talking about NBA basketball, Bill
a
Walton.
blind nut's gonna find a squirrel every once in a while. I don't know how much you hold up your one championship banner from the '70s.
We don't have football teams there or anything.
Well, and as to my point, I mean, the state of Oregon is
We didn't want
certainly
to.
lacking
We didn't want to have to
in,
go through the heartbreak of them leaving.
well, yeah, I mean, but there certainly is a lack of major sports teams.
No, no.
They all tend to center around Portland.
There's a soccer team in Portland.
Well, yeah, you have the Portland Timbers.
The Timber,
There's also
yeah.
a women's soccer team called the Portland Thorns.
Women in Storms,
Yeah.
yes.
And then you have the Trailblazers,
Mhm.
the basketball team.
And the greatest college football empire of the last 30 years.
Oregon State?
No, well, they're a good program too. But if you look at the last 20, let's go 30 years. They're going
Okay.
to be right up there with the top SEC teams as far as prominence and recruiting classes and overall victories and just really cool uniforms.
You're smiling as you say this because you know how stupid you're being, right?
What do you mean?
You
You're,
know, deep in your heart of hearts, you're being ridiculous.
well, you're talking about the founding fathers, and then you don't talk about Phil Knight and Nike. And
Well, no, Phil Knight, he in 1964, along with a track coach from the University of Oregon,
Bill Bowerman, Bill Bowerman.
helped put together Blue Ribbon Sports, which was the predecessor to Nike
Mhm.
Sports. I think I think what's the main guy again?
You're talking about Bill Bowerman,
Not
uh,
Bowerman, the other one.
Phil Knight.
Yeah,
You lost
I think Phil Knight actually killed Bill Bowerman to get sole control over Nike.
This is nowhere in the written record. You're creating. We're going to need a disclaimer that never happened. What kind of a podcaster are you, Kathleen
Fake news.
Sturgeon?
No, no, as far as I know, Bill Bowerman is doing well.
I don't imagine.
If he's dead, I'm sure Phil Knight had nothing to do with it.
He
But what Phil Knight did have to do with was just the atrocious parade of horrible uniforms
he
at the
died.
University of Oregon.
He died on December 24th, 1999.
Who Bill Bowerman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from 1911 to 1999, and now you can go and bash his uniforms.
Well, I don't know if the uniforms lay at the feet of Bill Bowerman.
No, they happened right after. No, they were getting pretty fancy.
This is when Phil Knight said, "Now we start doing things my way. Now we start having stupid uniforms with duck feathers on the shoulder
Yeah, but
pad."
this is the strangest history lesson talking about duck feathers. Um, we're
So,
we're
but
going right into the cliches of but think about the track culture. I mean, it is Track City, USA. It's the
this
capital
is
of
this
track
is
and field.
usually where the big Olympic trials for track and field
Mhm.
are done,
Yeah,
is at the University of Oregon.
right.
And so there are a couple other things of note. We met the aforementioned Nike, which started in Beaverton, Oregon. You have Tillamook Creamery,
Ooh,
which started in Tillamook, Oregon, named after the Native American tribe that lived in that particular area. Um, Now, are you one of those ones that still will only buy Tillamook cheese, or
I
have you gone
love
astray?
I love Tillamook cheese. It's great. Um, yeah, whenever possible, I'll get Tillamook cheese and beef jerky. They make a good beef jerky there too.
Okay,
Did you know? I didn't know this until I'm looking at the World Wide Web.
okay,
I can give you a few people. River Phoenix. It's from Oregon.
he died.
Yeah, well, he's from there apparently. William Hurt, the great actor. I didn't know this until just now. Kim
Wasn't,
Novak.
Children of a Lesser God, wasn't
Yeah.
that filmed in Oregon?
Well, it says so in this. I guess we have to trust it. I don't know if he was born there, but I just searched Oregon celebrities. Kim Novak, Courtney Love. Can you imagine in Oregon? Uh,
Yeah, I can imagine that.
okay, yeah, they had kind of a Seattle connection. I'm
Wasn't Clint Eastwood, didn't he live part of his childhood in Oregon?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
So you're not exactly bringing the big guns as far as celebrities go. Surely there are more, noted celebrities or famous people or noteworthy people who call Oregon home.
I don't know. I haven't done my homework like you, but there's a nice long list, nice list of people, very very great Americans from Oregon.
Great Americans. Okay, I'll take your word for it. Now I'm also always curious about, the cultural divides that exist within a state. The degree to which, what do people from Eugene typically think of people, um, from Portland? What do people from Portland think of people in East, Oregon? Um, when you talk about that, is there a does that divide exist where it's so stark that, there's these kind of stereotypes about what people from East Oregon are like, what people from Southwest Oregon are like, what people from Eugene are like? Does that kind of idea exist within the state?
I don't think so. I think people are very kind and open wherever
Okay.
you go in Oregon. Uh,
Okay.
I,
You decided not to take this seriously, but
well, I don't know. I think that even within Portland, there's a lot of variety. So I don't know if there's any story there here, Miller. You're trying to stir
no,
things up.
I'm trying to get the sense of the people, because I'm a man of the people. It makes me curious to wonder what Oregonians are actually like.
Yeah, may not be a lot of undecided voters in Oregon. They tend to have their camps. That's my impression. But I haven't been there in 30 years. What can I tell you?
So you can't really speak to the state that you call home any longer.
No, you're trying to drag us into the news and
No, 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 no.
barricading streets and firing police officers and,
I don't have
defunding
to talk about that. That's there's
and
enough yahoos talking about that as it is. I don't need
legalizing pot, which they're on the cutting edge. There you go.
that's what you're on the cutting edge of, legalizing pot?
Uh,
Now,
well, so, yeah, I feel like I'm trapped between 2 shores here, Miller, and,
well, being in Texas, you are trapped between 2 shores. One would say you're even trapped between 3 shores, so
so LA is fine, but it ain't mine.
that Randy Newman line?
No, it's, Neil Diamond, New York's
Yeah.
yeah, whatever it is. It's a great line. I can't remember it this early hour, but I feel I'm looking forward to visiting my home state in a couple of days because then we'll redo this whole podcast and I'll have
Well, no, this is a good way to kind of prep for your trip to
oh, it
Oregon.
is.
It's
Yeah,
so an idea of kind of refamiliarizing yourself with your alleged home state of Oregon.
alleg there are records here,
They
Miller.
well, sure, there's always records. And so I guess I'm thinking about back to my time in Oregon. It was the only time I'd ever been to Oregon. It's the only time I've been to Oregon since. And still trying to get Hair Dr. Bourgeois to my home state. But I think the idea that I was kind of left with is a state that is made up of small towns, that is made up of fairly nice people, as small towns tend to be. When you live in a small town, you don't have the luxury of being as much of a jerk, because the anonymity that exists in like the real large cities doesn't necessarily exist in Oregon, and so there's like a closer knit kind of community. I do think that Oregon, and like I said, any of these observations, you are welcome to stop me and
You're
correct.
wel just go power through here, Miller.
Well, no, but I think about Oregon as perhaps a last vestige of some of the more, the colorful aspects of, the hippie period. You do have that. You do have a strong environmentalist uh, uh, kind of stance in Oregon. And when you live in a state as beautiful and as environmentally rich as Oregon does, it makes sense that there are still tree huggers there, and that's part of the people's perception of Oregon is that it's a tree hugging state. Um, because I mean, if anything is going to send you in that direction, it's living in the kind of beauty that we drove through, both in flying over, going from Portland to Eugene, where we got off the plane on the tarmac like it was the 1930s, or whether it was the drive between Eugene and the coast,
Uh-huh,
which was gorgeous, or just the coast itself. We drove up the coast
uh-huh.
a bit and had some good food. Um, there's a lot there to sit there and whimsically think, "I could stay a while here."
I think I could too. That drive, up and down the coast. That would be a wonderful place to land.
Do I'm trying to think about how do we leave it with Oregon?
How do we leave it with them? I have
Yeah.
a list of their state symbols. Um,
Well, I know the state bird, I know the state flower.
well, the state animal is a beaver.
I don't think that was a shock to anybody. It is the moniker of the great university, Oregon State.
Yeah.
It doesn't have as many universities as I thought it would.
No.
There's only a handful of really big schools, Oregon, Oregon State, Portland State, Western Oregon, and then after that, I think you kinda drop off precipitously. But I mean, it certainly has big schools for the size of its population. I think the size of its population is like over 4 million, like between 4 to 5 million people call Oregon home,
Yeah.
which I mean, that's a lot of territory with nobody in it, you know. And so maybe it is quite surprising that they have as many big universities as they do.
Well, the tension always was, people moving up from California and increasing the home values and or paying all this money and buying our homes because they're everything there is so inflated that buying land and a home in Oregon is no big deal. So they're retiring in Oregon, California
Mm.
people.
Is there any part about what Oregon is that you think has left the biggest mark on you? You made an earlier comment about the kind of the take it easy kind of a thing. You're not a take it easy kind of guy, and
Mhm.
so
I used to be.
clearly that came from someplace else. But
It used to be. That's the thing.
yeah, well,
That's it's
is
worn.
there any remnant of your the Oregon influence? Is there what do you think is left of you as a personality that
Oh my
comes from
gosh.
Oregon?
There's there's al there's always a remnant, Ross, and
Yeah.
you should know this. There's always
Yes.
gonna be a remnant. Um, once again, what was the question?
You know what the question is.
Um, it's the light here, Miller.
The light?
But it sounds mysterious, but when you haven't been there in a while and then you find yourself in Oregon and you see the light, you realize it's something different. And it has to do with the terrain, the climate, but there's a subtlety to the light, and it doesn't matter what weather it is, and it's profound, it's deep, it's home. But there's something to it. It's not a stark, it's a diffused type light, and and it's a different type of beauty than you see anywhere else. And so if you've not been to Oregon for a while and you return there and you just you can feel. I mean, you take a deep breath, which I rarely do here, but you do there. So it's that the smells of your youth. But there's something about that light, and I think unless you're from there, you won't really appreciate what I'm talking about. But that's the difference.
I think in the sense that a forest can engender a certain kind of feeling of comfort
Mhm.
and of home. I think about the light of Oregon as mainly deflected by the tall branches of coniferous trees, and you never catch the light directly. It's always a reflected light. It's always a light that's kind of bounced off a couple of branches or a couple of other areas. And so I think it provides illumination, but it does not provide that darkness that sometimes you get, like in the panhandle of Texas, where there is nothing between you and the sun. That there is something a little bit more cozy. There's
Yeah,
something a little bit more homey when
we're
you think about my time in Oregon.
you're getting there. I think so. I would say, where I grew up, it was an intimate sky.
Mhm.
I mean, I grew up in a valley, with small hills, mountains on either side, and so the sun is reflecting off of that. But you look up and the sky is small. I mean, you don't see that far, and you
Mhm.
have the trees, and you have um, rain. You have clouds most of the time. So all this sort of combines to have this intimate experience. Nothing could be more opposite. I mean, some people from here, if they from Texas go there, find it claustrophobic, and the 7 or 8 months of rain to be problematic. But I to this day I get giddy anytime it's raining. And, that sound of rain at night is something you grow up with, but also the drizzle, and we don't get much drizzle in Texas. We get downpour and then it stops.
Right.
But having it uninterrupted rain, but not pouring rain, but drizzle for a month on end or so. Um, that's what I grew up with, and that's what I miss. And when it is cold weather, it just kind of teeters, at least where I grew up, on freezing, but it doesn't quite get there. So it's in that, so you can kind of picture that. But yeah, there's this diffusion of light, and it's profound, and every place is different, but that's what I remember most.
Of course, Oregon, as we said jokingly, but in reality, does contain multitudes. There are many aspects of the state, both geographically, environmentally, climate wise, everything else in between. But I will say, my time spent in Oregon, and it was spent with you. And so it was spent with someone who loves the state as much as you do. That certainly has colored my idea about Oregon. And it's given me the impression that it's a place that I want to get back to. And so hopefully I'm able to do that sooner rather than later.
Well, it's meaningful, and I can recall after that trip, when I go to your house for a football game, you would don the green and gold,
Yes.
and much appreciated. And I think it's a national program now in football. It's not the program I grew up with, where I sat in the end zone and they were
500 people with you.
yeah. But even sitting in the stands of a football game getting rained on, I guess you grew up with that too. There's something really special about that when everybody's getting rained on in a football game and it's dark and it's the middle of the day, you know?
Well, I think it's a testament to one's commitment.
Right.
And so and so it becomes a point of pride that no matter how cold it is or how much it's raining or how otherwise it's miserable, there is, as a pilgrim once said, it is not with us as it is with others whom small things can discourage. And so the idea of being able to live in a place that does have extremities, it does create a heartier soul. And perhaps that's part of the characteristic of Oregon as well.
I couldn't have said it better myself here, Miller. It's a more robust conditions than growing up. Yeah.
Very good.
Uh,
Well, we wrap up this latest installment of the states with the state of Oregon. Um, it is highly recommended that you visit. Not necessarily Portland. No, Lord knows what's happening up there.
Beautiful state.
Oh, Portland has been in the news lately. Do you know why? Not for political shenanigans. I'm talking about other stuff.
Um,
You know why Portland has caught the nation's attention?
let's hear it.
Portland has put together an $800 million package to try to bring Major League Baseball to the state. Now, the state is known for minor league baseball, the Eugene Emeralds.
I watched them growing up.
Yeah, and so the state has always had a minor league baseball presence, but there is a group out of Portland trying to, and they've even created renderings of a stadium that sits right on the Columbia River. And so you can imagine, in the same way that some of the great ballparks that sit on rivers
Oh, we'll call
or
it
waterways.
Riverfront Stadium. That's just the
Well,
name for it.
yeah. And so I don't know if that's what they're going to go with, but
Yeah.
the drawings, the renderings are just amazing. Utilizing a lot of wood to kind of create this kind of organic feel to the stadium. Um, they're still a long way from getting a baseball team, but they've certainly have put together a pretty impressive kind of introduction to Major League Baseball if Major League Baseball decides to expand, and there has been talk of that happening here soon. So, um, who knows?
Well, we get a little bit of that Nike money involved, and you could have quite a baseball.
Bob's your uncle.
There you go.
There you go. All right, and with that, we shall say adieu. We'll close everything out. Make sure you follow us on the Old School Podcast 2021 on Instagram. Anytime you hear an episode that you like, rave about it to your friends and your family and your associates and spread around the link. Whenever you come across an episode that's just okay, send it to the same people without the endorsement. Let them come to it in their own way. Either way, share the episode, like it, talk about it amongst your friends, continue the conversation wherever you may be. As we wrap up episode 128 of the Old School Podcast. And I shall say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller.